Hello and welcome to Outrageous Wellness. My name is Kristine Erickson. I'm your host. I am a psychologist, personal trainer, um, wellness coach. I am an ordained minister now as well. Yay! And I'm here with Kelsey and Charlotte. Please introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Charlotte Safos, and I am a business person, a Reiki master, and spiritual explorer, and so excited about Kristine's ministry.
Hi, I'm Kelsey. I am a yoga instructor. Sometimes I read some tarot cards. Sometimes I light some candles, and I'm an aspiring expert of all things occult.
And here we are today. It is, what's the date? It's the 20th of November, 2022. So welcome. I'm really excited. We want to talk about boundaries today, but also I should say, if you're listening to us on, just the audible version on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, or any place like that, know that we also have a YouTube channel now, so you can see our faces while we talk.
And my shiny ass forehead. I was like, yep, there it is. Look at that. Look at that glow.
Yes. We wanted to talk about boundaries today. So boundaries are really, really important. They are sometimes tough to navigate. We need to, protect our own boundaries, and then we also need to make sure that we're not overstepping into other people's boundaries. So, did either of you want to talk about why we want to talk about this today, like how this came up, or do we just want to? Okay, please.
I'm wedding planning. That is it. That's all you need to know. And I'm wedding planning, and I am experiencing. It's very interesting how big life events. I'm also getting my ring resized, so that's why I'm not wearing it. I always feel like if I say that, people are like, "Where is it?" And I'm like, "I have it. It literally was a size too big, like a full size too big." So it feels like when big life events happen, people have a tendency to have big opinions about things, especially people close to you, and want you to follow their prescribed regimen. And me being the stubborn little Taurus moon that I am, have decided to look at people and say, and so I've started setting this because when I was experiencing initial boundary, like people coming in and giving me their opinions, it's very hard. So now I've kind of addressed people and will tell them, I'm really not looking for your opinion. And I just say it outright and up front. I'm not looking for your opinion. I just need you to say to me, you're doing a good job. That is all I need out of this conversation. And sometimes I get people saying it begrudgingly, and sometimes I get people saying it meaningfully. And it's definitely a challenge, especially when you're trying to merge families and merge people. And I think especially when some people are not used to me being a member of their specific family unit, it can be a little tricky when they realize how stubborn I am. So boundary setting is something I just think we can talk about today.
Yeah, I can be very stubborn too. I'm a Capricorn, and then I'm also a Taurus moon. So I've kind of like got, like double whammied there, if you believe in the astrology side of things. And I've always been a kind of a self-contained person, definitely an introvert. I don't know if it shows at all. I mean, I know that I'm doing this. This is not something, it's interesting because having a podcast like this, especially one where I'm showing my face and not just talking, is like, I would never see myself doing this, right? This is not something that comes naturally to me. So, I'm always kind of like a little nervous, like, oh, what am I saying? I don't know what I'm saying. I don't know what I'm doing. I really don't. But here I am. In terms of tarot, and I do tarot reading as well. So if anybody's interested, hit me up. Um, but in terms of tarot, like the boundaries card for me is the Four of Pentacles, which is kind of interesting because it's also called the miser card, the guy who's sitting there like holding on to his Four Pentacles, and these are mine, and I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna be wasteful or, but it's also like, I feel like about boundaries, like these are my boundaries and I'm sticking to them. So I like that card.
I think it's funny too to try and navigate. I'm so sorry, Charlotte. I just completely interrupted you. It's hard to navigate too, like when to set a firm boundary. This is what I'm struggling with right now. When to set a firm boundary and when to set a loose boundary, and to know when somebody's going to respect a boundary and when somebody's not going to respect a boundary. And like one of my biggest challenges has been trying to figure out, like I will set a boundary and then somebody will go past it anyways. And so my thought process has been, oh, they're going to just respect this because I put this in place. They know that. But then being a boundary violator, not going straight past that. So it's like, what do we do once you kind of like said, hey, I just want you to say, hey, Kelsey, you're doing a good job. And they say, no, it's ugly anyways. Like, what's the next step? What do you guys think?
Well, I think it was really interesting listening to you both in the beginning. You both started out by saying, I'm stubborn, right? I'm going to flip the script on that for a minute. Because I agree, like, boundary setting can be really challenging. I actually look at it a little differently. I don't think you're stubborn. I think that people call it stubbornness when you have a stakeholder in your life who wants to control or manipulate you or get something from you, right? So then for me, that's like, okay, well, that's their issue, and I'm not dismissing it. If it just lightens the load a little bit, I guess. And so when you say you're stubborn, it's that you know what you want, you know what feels good. When you're planning a wedding, you have so many stakeholders, and that's the great news. The great news is that all of these people love you, and we can bring that into our lives, right? Whether it's our families, our friends. If you're in business, you're a team, right? But you all have your own perspective, and you're coming from it from your, like, what you think is the right way, right? So instead of saying stubborn, I think it's basically like you're standing in your power. And what's happening is that people are like, oh, wait a second, especially people who are not used to, how do I say this kindly, who want something from you.
Yeah.
Because they want something from you. So I think to think about it that way is more like, okay, when you're setting a boundary, feel the energy of it, right? Does the energy feel good for you, Kelsey, saying, I really just want you to tell me I'm doing a good job? Feels good. You have so much on your plate right now. And I know you want people to be happy, and you want people to be engaged, and you want to make everyone, a part of it. With that comes those personalities. So for me, if I were in your shoes and someone says, well, I think it's ugly, I think I'd be like, okay, well, that's your perspective. And I think there's probably something a lot more behind that. And maybe I'm overreaching. Maybe it's not. Maybe they hate the color purple and they love the color red. I don't know. But at the end of the day, I love purple and it's my wedding, right? So, and the way I'm saying it sounds a bit dismissive. I'm not trying to be dismissive at all. It's more about just understanding that you want to bring people together. But again, that's you, like, pushing out what you want to other people, right? Just as they are to you. So I think setting boundaries is really important to feel the energy. And when something comes back at you, if it feels icky or something, what do I do with that energy? And then it's almost like you're setting a boundary for yourself as well. So if someone doesn't respect your boundary, it's up to you to do something with that without getting upset about it. I don't know if I made any sense there.
No, that does. And I appreciate you saying that. And then I also want to ask. So sometimes I notice when people, this is a weird spiritual thing that I do that I made up in my head. So this might not even be a real thing, but I'm going to ask you guys about it. Whenever somebody gives me kind of pushback on a boundary, I'll leave the situation and I pretend like that pushback is like this little thing on my body. And I purposely breathe it in and then I blow it out, and I try to blow it out a open window or outside, like I'm blowing it back to them. Like I'm not taking that on. I don't know.
I think that's great, Kelsey. And there's no right way to do that, right? That you intuitively did that. That's amazing that you could do that. You could breathe it in. That means that what you're doing is you're accepting that, your way is not the highway, right? You're breathing it in, but then you're letting it go when you need to. And I would say you could add, instead of blowing it back at them, what you could do is you can imagine gold light. And basically what you do is you're releasing it from you. And then if you surround it with gold light, it's basically you're transforming that energy into something positive instead of negative.
Oh, that's beautiful. No, I like that. I like that because then I can transmute it. That's what some of the meditations where you push it back down into the earth, and so she can recreate something out of it. What a beautiful ability. I think boundaries are so hard, especially when I am a people pleaser. I do want to see people be happy, but I also am tired of giving up my happiness to make everybody else feel like they're the happiest they can be.
And I think that, speaking to the specific example of somebody saying that something that you're planning on doing for your wedding is ugly, and I don't know what ugly means to them, right? So if you are willing, maybe asking them what they mean by that would be useful. Because if it's because they don't like the color purple,
yeah,
then that's one thing, and that's just a completely aesthetic thing that they have. But if it's something else, if there's a different kind of a deeper energy going on there, you might want to just ask about it, and it doesn't mean that you have to act on what they're telling you, but it might be a good idea if it feels right.
I like that. And in any boundary, when somebody says something, to be like, well, what do you mean? Because I work with a lot of men who are not really believers in feminine power. And one of them the other day said something about, made a joke about how women can't be bosses in the workplace. And he was saying he was joking. Charlotte's literally covering her eyes. I looked at him and I stared at him for a second, because I'm learning in my boundary journey I'm going to start with just being quiet when people say things that I'm uncomfortable with, so that way I can eventually work up to, well, that's very interesting that you decided to say that because it's incorrect. But I'm working there, right? I'm not there yet. So I just kind of sat there quietly for a second. And I think the next step to this would have been, what do you mean by that? How can you elaborate and make him explain
their reasoning?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what Kristine just said is very enlightened, and I clearly have a way to go to get enlightened. There are two things about that. One, if you ask the question, you have to be prepared to follow that through. So if it really is just, I really don't like purple because I hate Prince and I hate his music and he loved purple, that's a funny thing that can end in a nice way. But if it's you know what, I'm just really not happy with you getting married and blah, 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 then you have to be prepared to kind of
You're
go down
opening
that.
the Pandora's box.
Exactly. And then it's kind of like, I mean, just be prepared is what I would say.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
two, about the person you said at work, for me, again, it's, what do you want to spend your time on?
yeah.
Like, what do you really want to spend your time on? Is that someone who you think you can have a good conversation about women work in the workplace? Or is that just going to end up being a time suck and you literally are not going to get anywhere with that? I don't like being like that. I think in the workplace, I would say, it's something you file in your head and you walk away. And when you're dealing with your family and friends or a very close colleague, then it might be worth it to go down that road.
Yeah.
But I do think that you have to look at each situation as, is this worth my energy and my time?
Yeah. I think that's fair. And I think I sometimes that silence too, like that radio silence I give people, is just enough to let them sit in the discomfort. Because I'm noticing on all this is when somebody says something and I go, okay, that's what you chose to say. And then I just
Just sort of sit there and wait for them to elaborate or not.
Yeah. I'm like, would not have been my first choice of words, but you chose that. That is what you chose. And I think that has been very enlightening to me to see how that pans out when you kind of just let them sit in the discomfort of the thought they just vocalized. Yeah.
I think that different personality types as well have different capacities for having hard and soft boundaries, right? So, and I think that it's funny because we talked about being stubborn, and I get that from my parents. Say I was very stubborn when I was little, right? When I was a kid, and I jump my mom says I jumped my chin out, and she was like, oh, here we go. And and then I guess there was a long period of time where I was kind of a people pleaser, worried about what people thought of me, and I think that that's another like boundary issue that most of us need to work through. I think a lot of people can relate to going through periods in their lives where they felt like they felt very compelled to do things that would make people happy, like, and overly concerned about how people viewed them, like, at least for me. And and then finally getting to a place where it's like, okay, if not everybody likes me, that's okay, right? It only matters the people who matter to me, and so it's kind of interesting how we get through that stuff and to the other side eventually, and are much happier people as a result. If I don't want to do something, I don't do it, and if somebody doesn't like that, that's okay. So it's a very different. It's like, I really like feeling this way. I like this. I like just being who I am. And it's interesting. My husband, so we belong to the Unitarian Church, which is a very liberal church, but I've only been very sporadically for a little while. But my husband goes very, very regularly, and he was there this last Sunday, and somebody actually noticed some of my posts, because I started posting on Instagram more consistently, and then posting some of that stuff to my Facebook page. And somebody from church came up to him and asked him about it. Some of the things that he was saying, like about tarot and things like that, and commented on it. And so, and he told me about that when he got home. And I said, would you be more comfortable if I stopped posting that stuff? He said, no, you do what you want. They don't like it, that's okay. I was like, cool. So that's a boundary. That's like like, is it okay? Like, I'm not going to do something that's going to create a lot of stuff. But, you know, but if the people that are important to me are okay with it, then what the hell?
I think that's what it kind of like boils down to too, is like, I think meditation helps because you can kind of sit in and see what feels right and what feels wrong. And then to be respectful of the people that mean the most to you. So you kind of have to you do have to define, who am I in a healthy relationship with, and I'm going to check in with them, make sure, you know, as I'm building this life with you, if it's a friend, if it's a companion, if it's a husband, wife, it's just kind of, it's important. I think that brings a whole other aspect to it for me too, what you just said, because you were checking in with the person that, you know, this is a safe, healthy relationship. I want to check in with him because it's affecting him. And then also checking in with myself because this feels good to me. He's okay with it. We've settled it. We've communicated. Now we're moving forward.
Absolutely. And you know, I think you all may remember, our listeners may remember Amy, who talked about human design. And I think during our podcast, she said something that was really powerful to me. It was like, if we would all just let each other be our own types, we'd all be really, really happy. And I think it does come down to that, right? It really comes down to being able to communicate in a way that is respectful and loving, and putting out your needs to someone, and then having them understand it, and maybe not understand the entirety of it, just be supportive and respectful of you. And we will always have times in our lives, in any relationship, where we do have to compromise. And I think that's where it becomes, again, going back to, is this worth my time? That question. Is this a relationship that is worth me going down the path of exploring this? Yes or no? And then, is this person going to be able to understand my perspective? And at the same time, am I completely open to understanding their perspective? And being able to, get to that place. And as Kristine said, being a people pleaser, I think the older you get, the more you realize that there's no way that you will ever please everyone, and trying to do so is a fool's errand. And it's just, something that we should all strive to do, is just understand each other more. And I don't know, in a more, what's the word I'm looking for, in a more supportive way. Right? I mean, the three of us don't think the same things, and we all respect and support each other. So it seems so simple, and yet when you get into the relationships, it's really not, is it?
Yeah, and I think it's because we are all different and unique, depending on what, it doesn't matter what system you're talking about. If you're talking about human design, I'm a projector, so I find it's true when I try to give my advice to people, and they're not looking for advice. They're like, I get my feelings hurt, right? And they're like, don't call me, I'll call you. Is kind of the reaction that I get. While if I, just sort of am myself, and just, I'm here available for people when they, when they need me, they'll come, right? People will come, and they will ask me, they will approach me, and I can give, when they ask, I can give my advice, my opinion, my whatever, and then it's taken well, right? So there's one way for me to look at boundaries, with myself. I need to be careful not to cross into other people's boundaries, because that just creates the opposite effect of what I'm looking for, right? Instead of drawing people to me, it makes them like back off. Yeah, Kelsey, you are what? You are a generator?
Oh, me or
Yeah.
Charlotte? I'm a manifesting
You're
generator.
a manifesting generator.
I think that's interesting though, because it's we were kind of talking about it before the podcast started, how sometimes when you start to set those boundaries, or if you're kind of pushing into other people's boundaries, it can do the opposite of what you want to have happen. So in a certain situation right now, this person is kind of trying to get it, like set boundaries with me and create a situation, but they're also crossing my boundaries. And it's causing me to back away from the relationship because they're steamrolling past things that I've asked. I've just been like, hey, just contact me within this amount of time. And then that's because they want something else happening. It's important to recognize, where does my line begin and where does their line begin? And to not try to not infiltrate somebody else's respective boundaries.
Yeah.
And I think that we talked about this before we started. Basically, this person really wants to be more involved. And by doing that, you're backing away. And so they're manifesting exactly what they don't want, because what they're doing is not in their flow, because they're not listening to what you need. And so it's that, again, when we talk about this, it's great because it's such a cautionary tale. Whenever you feel heavy, or whenever you feel, maybe you're pushing a person, whether it's your family, your friends, or a colleague, and you're pushing and you're feeling a little bit like desperate, that you want something. That's when that's a great reminder to ourselves to step back and say, okay, what's going on with me that I'm pushing this? And that's a wonderful thing. That's what we're all here to do, is to grow and evolve. And I think from a wellness standpoint, it's a great thing, you're right, to set boundaries for ourselves and then to look at other people's boundaries and see how we're reacting to them.
Absolutely. Yes, Kelsey?
No, that's beautifully fair. And I'm sorry, I just have my computer set up very awkwardly and it started to fall. So that's why I remuted. I was like, oh no. But no, I think that's, from a wellness perspective, recognizing, the wellness of our relationships and the wellness of ourselves, and having that self-care and the respect of, the people around us. It's definitely giving me perspective of a holistic view talking to you guys about this, because I know when I don't feel right about something, I just don't do it. But I know sometimes it's hard for me to see somebody else coming and giving me a boundary. And it's been a challenge to kind of be like, okay, this isn't a personal attack on me. And I think that's one of the biggest things, is to be like, they're not personally coming for me. This is what they're comfortable with. And I think a lot of people can sometimes misconstrue boundaries for, now you do have, if somebody can be very, if they're being, abusing a boundary and being aggressive and assertive, that's a completely separate issue. But if somebody says, I don't want to go to that restaurant, I'm allergic to a lot of things there, it's not a personal attack. It's okay, fair. That's you respecting your health and safety. Or if somebody, like at the gym that I go to, we all high five after we finish a set. And this guy came up to me and I went to go high five him and he put his elbow up. And initially I was like, I feel so rejected. But then I realized, no, he just doesn't want, he's respecting himself, being like, that's not comfortable for me. This is where I'm comfortable. Mm-hmm. And I think recognizing that it's the boundaries that people set is not about you. It's about them taking care of themselves.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. And I also feel like, there's also, and it's interesting because we are all a little bit different with that. And if you look at the Enneagram, you've got, which we've talked about on the podcast before, which is 9 different types that you probably fall most into one of those 9 types. And there are a couple types in there that have probably maybe could have more boundary issues, like Enneagram 9, which is the peacemaker who can see everybody's perspective. And I know Charlotte's a 9, right? So, so you may have some experience personally with how boundaries may be different for you than for somebody else. So
Yeah, I think, and to just, looking again, as you said, my younger self versus my little older self, and now is very, like very, very different on how I handle that. And I do have to say, I really appreciate seeing other people's perspectives. And the older I've become, the more sure I am in my own perspective. And that allows me, as Kelsey, just said, to not be offended. And still so I feel like I'm getting the best of both worlds right now, honestly. And it's hard to be offended at this point, about certain things.
and I think that,
Not
yeah.
political Twitter. I don't feel that way about Elon Musk. Sorry.
Charlotte just couldn't hold that in. And remember, also, we have different, sort of circles of comfort. We have the few people that we let inside our boundaries, and for most of us, that's just a very few people. And then, we have then a ring outside of that of people who we let in, we don't let in as far. And then, and then another ring outside of that who, it's like, okay, these boundaries are like firm. You step over it, we're done. Because, we're not that close.
And I do have to say that this is really funny because one of us is trying to set our boundaries right now. The other two are not listening.
I know, are ignoring them because Kelsey has to get going. So,
Kelsey has to go.
And she's like, I have to go. I have to be at this place. And we're like, just talking on and on and on. So,
I so badly wish I feel like this needs a part two.
We will do a part two.
I actually feel like this needs a part two.
Yeah,
okay.
we will. But I do just want to say one really quick thing. I'm going to be so quick, Kelsey. The fact that you're getting married, you and Jake, this time prepping for the wedding is a really good mirror of how the people in your life will support your marriage. So I would say to use this time as a tool, as a learning tool to create an even stronger marriage together. And you and Jake make sure that you're talking about it. And I think you'll understand as you go through the process, like how this time will be reflective of the future.
I love that. And I appreciate that. Thank you.
So good luck. Have fun this afternoon, Kelsey. And I'm going to see Annie DeFranco this evening. So that'll be fun.
Ooh,
doing what?
Today?
Yeah.
I have work I have to catch up on.
Oh, fun. Okay. Yeah. So
it'll be fun. It'll be productive, and I'll start Monday right out of the gate.
All right. Perfect. So thank you everybody for joining us. I know this was a short time today, but it was fun. It was good. And we will revisit this in more detail at some point in the future. So have a wonderful week. Thank you all for being here. This is Outrageous Wellness. And if you like something you heard, please tell a friend about it. And we will see you soon. Bye-bye. Thank you. All right.